All right, good afternoon again. My name's Fred Bowen, still Fred Bowen, for those who have hung around for this talk too. I'm the author of 23 sports books for kids 8 to 12 years old. I also write a weekly kids sports column for the Kids Post page of the Washington Post. And the Washington Post is one of the charter sponsors of the National Book Festival. Before we get started with Jason Reynolds, first a word of thanks to the co-chairman of the festival, David Rubenstein, and the other generous sponsors. If you want to become a sponsor or donate to the National Book Festival, look in your program, look on the back. There's a way to do it, and it would certainly be a good use for anyone's money. We're going to have questions after the presentation, and if you could stand at the microphone, that would be very helpful, and you might be on the videotape of the event. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Jason Reynolds. First thing you should know is he is a local guy, all right? He was born in Washington, D.C., raised in Oxon Hill, Maryland. He is a graduate of Bishop McNamara High School and the University of Maryland. It's so easy to get yeas on that. But now, the more important thing is now he is a really important voice in young people's literature with such award-winning books as All-American Boys, As Brave as You, Long Way Down. And when I say award-winning, I don't mean little awards. He was a finalist for the National Book Award. He had a Newbery Honor Award. He won the Walter Dean Myers and Coretta Scott King Awards. He's also the author of such fun books as the Track series. I think there was a picture of it up there, and Miles Morales' Spider-Man. One thing he absolutely does not do. He does not write boring books. So he is here to talk to you about the books. He will be signing his books at booth 11 at 5 p.m. Let's give it up for a local guy, Jason Reynolds.
Hello, hello, everybody all right? Y'all good? All right, so it's a whole lot of y'all in here, and we only got a little bit of time. So I'm trying to figure out how to do this, because I got like 25 minutes, and that's question and answer and everything else, and me talking, and there's so many young people here, and there's so many not so young people here, and I'm trying to figure out how to best serve everybody. So I could talk a little bit, or we could just do a whole bunch of questions, and I can really answer all the questions that you may have. Anybody have any questions, first of all, just so I can know what's happening? Not yet? All right, so here's what we'll do. Really quickly, I'm going to tell you, we're going to talk about something else. We're not going to talk about books for a second. All right. Who's from Washington, D.C.? Is anybody from D.C.? All right, so we're going to talk about D.C. for a second, and then we'll talk about the books. When I was growing up a long time ago, Washington, D.C. had a very special music. Still has a special music, especially if you're coming from my community. And when I say my community, I mean the black community. And what this music is called Gogo music. Has anybody heard of Gogo music? All right, a whole bunch of y'all. If you haven't heard of Gogo music, let me explain how it works. Gogo music was started in the 1970s by a wonderful man who is now passed on. His name is Chuck Brown. Chuck Brown wrote a whole bunch of really good songs. His most famous song was a song called Bustin' Loose. All the old heads in the house know this song. I feel like bustin' loose. That music was rooted in African music that he then mixed with music of Latin America, soul, funk, house music, and every other kind of music he could think of. He put it all in a pot, he stirred it up, he mashed it up, and it became a new music that he called Gogo. And the reason he called it Gogo is because the point of the music was for it to never stop. When you went to a Chuck Brown party, you were supposed to hear the same song for 2 hours, right? 2 hours of you just rocking. The song going and going and going and going. And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now in the 1980s and in the early 1990s, this music started to change as younger people started to grab a hold to it. So you had new bands coming in. You had Rare Essence, You have proper utensils. These are all, some of y'all are like, what is he talking about? You have homework tonight, right? Go home and look these bands up. And then in my generation, you had bands like the Northeast Groovers, Junkyard Band, Backyard Band. These are all Washington, D.C. bands. These are young people with minimal resources who have taught themselves how to play instruments, who have formed 15-person bands, and who are playing shows night after night for kids who are coming from their neighborhoods. Imagine coming to see a whole bunch of kids from neighborhoods that most of us are too afraid to walk through, and those kids have formed basically their version of a symphony orchestra. It's the most beautiful thing you will ever see. And so we would go to the Gogo as kids. You would go in and you'd see the band, and there'd be 15 people, a bass player, a keyboardist. There'd be 4 people on a microphone, a guitar player, a singer or two. There's always a girl in the band to sing, a guy in the band to sing whose voice was always terrible, right? A rapper who was a terrible rapper. You had a man who played the congos, or the congas, or as we say in D.C., the congos. And usually this is two conga drums. But in this city, for this music, we played 4 conga drums, rototoms, timbales. These are instruments used in salsa, merengue. Everything is mixed up in the same pot. And all these kids are there, and they rocking. Now, here's the position for the people on the microphone. You had the rapper, the singer, the yeah man, and what the yeah man was he was the guy whose job was to say yeah, right? That's it. His only role was to stand there and every now and then just say yeah. That's it. And we loved him, right? He was the ad-lib guy, the hype man. And then you had what we called the lead talker. The lead talker was the maestro of the band. He was the leader, the captain, the quarterback. He was the boss. And his job was to conduct the band and to control the crowd. And the way he did this was by making sure everyone in the crowd felt important. Here's how it worked. Halfway through a go-go set, there'd be a breakdown. And what that meant was that everybody would stop playing their instruments except for the drummer and the congo player. And during this breakdown, the lead talker would then look out into the audience and he would ask a couple of questions. Number 1, where y'all from? And number 2, what's your name? And if he was good, he'd ask, and who's your crew? What we would do before we went to the Go-Go was we would make signs. People in D.C. would make signs, right? They would say, Minnesota Avenue crew, right? The Kennedy Street Honeys, right? All these different crews and neighborhood affiliations, blocks that they lived on, the 1300 block of this, the 1400 block of this, right? Wherever you were from, Southside, Wheeler Road, all these different neighborhoods represented, and you would come with your sign or your t-shirt with your neighborhood and your name and your crew written on it, and you will hold it up. And when the lead talker said, let me see who we got in the building, he'd look out into the crowd and he'd call out your name. He said, where y'all from? And you'd say, I'm from, Uptown. Where y'all from? You say, Condon Terrace. Where y'all from? You say, Barry Farm. Whatever he was saying. And then he'd say, well, what's your name? Right? And you yell your name out. Right? Or he'd see the sign and he'd say, I see you, little Jason. Good to see you in here tonight, little brother. I see you, Rashid. I'm glad you came out tonight, sis. Right? Shouting you out on the microphone, right? And then after all that, he said, who's your crew? And you'd say, you name your crew. It was a big deal. Now, here's why this was important. Follow me. Here's why this is important. The day after the Go-Go, what we knew was that all these parties were being recorded onto cassette tapes. And you could go to the store, what they called the PA Palace, which was basically a kiosk in any mall in the area, that sold cassette tapes of the Go-Go you just came from. So you would walk up to the man and you'd say, hey man, you got last night's backyard band, last night's junkyard band, and the guy would say, here you go, brother, $5. You can get him the $5 and you get in your car or you get back to your house and you turn the tape on and you wait and you'd wait and you'd wait. And then the breakdown came and he'd say, let's see who we got in the building. And you're like, here it comes. And he'd say, tell me where y'all from in here, and you waiting to hear your voice scream out your neighborhood, scream out your street. He said, what's your name? Or you wait for him to say, I see you, little Jay. Good to see you. Thanks for coming out tonight, little brother. And that's me. Right? Imagine what it felt like for the whole city to know the name of my block, the name of my friends, and what we called ourselves, and to hear my name on a tape that was circulating all over town. See, when we were growing up, we didn't want to meet Jay-Z. We wanted to meet Big G from the Backyard Band. He represented something for us because he had the control and the power to make the whole city know that we existed. That's all I think about when I'm writing these books. I'm the lead talker. That's my job. My responsibility is to look out in the crowd and say, where y'all from? Right? What's your crew? Right? What's your name? And to put those names, those neighborhoods, those feelings in a book. We don't value how important it is for young people just to see themselves. To feel represented in a book. It meant the world for kids growing up in D.C. to hear their names on those tapes. Something so small that nobody outside of our community even knew was happening. Yet for a lot of us, it was the biggest deal in the world. It was like winning a Grammy. To hear your name on a tape coming out of a mouth of somebody you respected. Somebody that you felt like could see you and understood what it is you were going through. That's what it means to write Ghosts. People are like, well, why you write Ghosts? Because it's a true story. About Matthew Carter, one of our best friends who grew up in Barnaby Terrace. It's a true story, right? His story is now, it now exists outside of his own mind and his own world. The whole world gets to call his name out, gets to hear him call his own name out, gets to hear me call his name out. What an amazing, amazing experience for him who is 36, 37 years old to give to his children who are now 15, 16, and 17 years old. It's amazing. And some of you are probably like, well, what if we're not from D.C.? What about us? What if we don't understand the community in which you've come? What if we don't understand the experiences that Ghost had? What if we don't know how to hear that music? Here's the thing about go-go music. If you hear it and you've never heard it, you will say it sounds like noise. If you hear it, and anybody from D.C. knows this, if you hear this music and you have never heard it before, you will say that it sounds like noise. It is never recorded on state-of-the-art recording equipment, so it's always a little muffled. And the music has so many different sounds that if you're not familiar with the way it sounds, if your ears haven't been trained to the rhythms and the multi-rhythms of that music, you will say that it sounds dissonant. But if you give it some time, if you give it some time, give it a fair ear, a fair listen, lean in, have some patience, right? Be a little more disciplined and a little more active in trying to understand what the music is about. If you go see it live, step into the spaces that you normally don't step into, be around the people that you're normally not around, diversify your friendship circles, diversify your schools, diversify your libraries, diversify your bookshelves, right? Then perhaps you would at least understand why the music sounds so good to the rest of us. You would at least maybe be able to understand the brilliance that it takes to make the music, even if the music isn't something that directly connects to your life. There's a way for us to still connect to the things, even if they're not rooted in our own experiences. We can't use that as a cop-out anymore. Do a little work. Try to understand. Your kids need you to try to understand, because you are not necessarily living the lives that your kids are living, even if they're living in your home. So you're going to have to do a little work. It's going to sound a little noisy at first, but be a little patient. And if you are, then you'll be able to hear your name called out on the cassette tape. And you can learn how to rock with the rest of us. I got about 15 minutes, 10 minutes. I'm going to take some questions, and we can boogie. All right. You can ask any question about any book or anything, and I'll give you an honest answer. Have at it. What you got? That's your name? So the question is, how did I pick out the name Aurelia for Sunny? Because her name is Aurelia. So I picked it out because it's you. You know what I'm saying? I knew. You ain't even know I was thinking about you the whole time, you know? But in truth, Aurelia came from one of my good friends. I called her and I said, look, you're a dancer. You've been a dancer for a very long time. I have no idea how to write dance into this book. So if you give me all the like secrets to how to write dance scenes into a book, I'll put your name in the book. And that's how Aurelia sort of happened. So shout out to my homegirl Aurelia who told me how to write all the like weird dance moves that Sonny does in the book. Let's go. I got your microphone. Yep. Say it again.
What's your favorite book that you wrote?
What's my favorite book that I've written? Oof, it's hard. What's your favorite book that I've written?
Patina.
Patina? Mine too, my man. Yeah, mine too. And I don't know if y'all know how big of a deal that is. That my man's favorite book is Patina. Anybody else? Yeah, we'll go back and forth. If you have a question, I'm gonna get you, but it might be easier for you to get to the microphone. I promise I'll get you though. Yep.
So I'm a happily married school librarian, but I refer to you as my fictional literary boyfriend because I think you are amazing.
Thank you.
I will not ask you to marry me because that'd be weird, but I read your books and I sense in them a mixture of anger and frustration about the things that we see in our communities and in our country, coupled with this joy of just what it means to be human and a family.
Yeah.
How do you prioritize when you're writing your books what I'm going to be angry about in this one and talk about in this one, and then keep that in tension with the joy and the happiness that we feel too?
I think it's tough. I think that's a good question. I think it's tough. My mother always says, don't ever trust nobody who is all cry and no laugh. Right? I think that like if we were being honest about humanity, there's no way that we could talk about the bad things without talking about the joy. I'm around kids all the time, right? Young people who are experiencing heavy things. And it's interesting because anytime a young person has experienced trauma or anything that has sort of been heavily weighted, there are still never moments where they aren't cracking jokes with their friends. Right? There's still moments, like no matter what you've been through, if you're 11 years old, you goofy. Right? Doesn't matter, right? And there's beauty in that in a way that I think I'm always thinking about. Right? I think children get it right in that way. I think as we get older, we sort of the hardness crystallizes in a different way. But as young people, they're a little more malleable. They understand that you can be both and. Right? I can be upset and still laugh at the things that are funny, because that's life. Anybody who's ever had loss in your life, and I don't know everybody's sort of death traditions, but in the black community, there's nothing sadder or funnier than a funeral. Right? It's just the way it works. You know what I mean? And I think I try to show that in the books as often as possible. It's fair to the kids, too. I just think, look, I'm not interested in sort of writing what we all call pain porn, and like, that's not me. I think life is good and bad and complex, and I want to put all that on in every book, the best I can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Why do you write books?
Why do I write books? I ask myself this every day. There's so many other art forms that are so much easier. You know what it is? I write books because at the end of the day, I think that you deserve, look, the greatest gift that we could give one another is the gift of our own stories, right? If I can give you my story, that means that I've basically given you a huge part of myself, and I'm trusting you with that. And so what I wanted to do is say, you and I, the minute that you read one of my books, you and I are friends. We know each other. That means that you know there's somebody in the world who you may see or you may not see who is thinking of you. And that is a powerful, powerful tool when things get tough, right? That's the reason that I do this every day, you know. Thank you. It's a pretty dress you got on.
What advice would you give to future writers?
What advice would I give to future writers? Well, there are a couple things I'll tell you really quickly. The first two are going to sound really silly. You got to read, you got to write. I know that feels obvious, but the truth is that you'd be surprised how many writers don't read or write. Therefore, they ain't really writers, but they call themselves writers, right? The other thing that you have to understand, whether you want to be a writer or whether you want to be anything, is that excellence is a habit. Never forget this, okay? Excellence is a habit. It's not something you can turn on or turn off. You're either going to be excellent or you're not going to be excellent. You're going to create positive habits for yourself right now, right? You want to be a writer. Let's say you want to be a writer?
Yeah.
You turn your homework in on time?
Yeah.
All right, you headed the right direction then.
Thank you.
You got it.
What gave you the idea to write your Miles Morales book?
What gave me the idea to write Miles Morales? Well, my Miles Morales book is, of course, as you know, a little different than a normal Spider-Man story. And the reason why is because I feel like Peter Parker, as beloved as he is, I think it's a little bit corny, right? And here's what I mean. I think that Peter Parker says that with great power comes great responsibility, right? That's his whole thing. And that's true, by the way. I think that's true. But that's not true for a 15-year-old, right? When I was your age, let's say right now, right? How old are you?
11.
11. So let's say I said, look, I'm getting ready to give you all this power. You're going to be able to jump from here to here. You're going to run as fast. You're going to be the fastest person on earth. You're going to have superhuman strength. Are you going to be responsible with it? Go ahead and tell us a lie in front of all these people. What you going to do with it? You going to go to the basketball court? You going to go to the soccer field? You going to go to the baseball mound?
I'll probably just play around with it.
There you go. And that's an honest answer, right? And guess what? So would I. Like, that's actually what anybody in this room would do, right? And so what I wanted to show was a young man with all that power who just honestly wanted to play around with it, or at least his friend wanted him to play around with it, because that's who we are as human beings, especially when we are a little bit younger. And that's what I wanted to get at. Make it a little more real, you know?
I have 2 questions.
Thank you for reading it, by the way.
I have 2 questions to ask.
Okay.
The first one is, what's your favorite part of writing books?
My favorite part of writing books is finishing books. Next question.
What's your favorite sport?
What's my favorite sport? I grew up playing basketball. I'm always going to be a basketball. And I was lucky to grow up in the time of Jordan, even though I really like the time of LeBron a lot these days. But I grew up playing basketball, man. That was my sport. Still is. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
How long does it take you to write books?
How long does it take me to write books? It depends on the book. Every book is different. Ghost took 6 weeks. Long Way Down took 2 weeks. And it took me a year and a half to edit. Right? Patina took a year, almost a year to write. Every book is a little bit different. You never really know. I just kind of sit down and do the best I can. But some books take a little bit. I mean, All American Boys took 6 weeks, you know. It just kind of depends on what the book is, man. Every book's different. Yeah.
So how many books did you write down?
How many books did I write down? How many books have I written? I think we're at number 12, something like that. I don't know, 12, 13. We're up there somewhere. I just do my work. I ain't worried about it. Just keep it going, you know.
Okay.
In your opinion, what is the scariest sea creature?
Well, in my opinion, what's the scariest sea creature? Any sea creature I can't see. Right? For sure. Yeah.
I have read all of the Track Series book except for Lou because it isn't, released yet.
Yeah.
But how do you think Lou will, as a story, play out?
So you want me to tell you what the book is about? You want me to break it all down for you? Let me give. So here's what I won't tell you that because I want you to read it and I want it to feel fresh to you. But what I will say is every question will be answered. All the questions will be answered. And Lou is a very different kind of character. And that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
But just read. And thank you for reading the other 3. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay.
I started reading your books in 7th grade, and I've been following them since then. And I feel like I've watched you grow in popularity as I go to each of the events you're at. And your books are too, I think Long Way Down, it's becoming a play, right?
Yeah, for sure.
How are you responding to that and dealing with it?
To the success?
Yeah.
That's a very good question. So my best friend is here, right? My best friend in the world, somebody that I've known since it's been 31 years of friendship with this person, and he's in the crowd. And people like him are sort of the anchors. Things get crazy and it gets noisy, and it's easy for me to look out into the audience, and I'm so grateful for all of you who've come, and I'm so fortunate that any of you care anything about the things that I've written, but this isn't my real life, right? This is a part of my life, and it's a part that I love, and I'm sharing it with you, but my real life is at my mom's kitchen table. My real life is with my homeboys who've known me my whole life and know all the things that y'all will never know, right? And so I try my best to surround myself with the people who love me and who know me, because they're the ones who are going to always tell me the truth. And we all need the truth, even when it makes us uncomfortable. And that's how I deal with it, you know? You got to wait till the end. I got you the very last question, but I can't get you right now. Yep.
Hi. So I really admire your craft because you try so many different things. You've done a verse novel that took place in a day.
Yeah.
You've done
you're on to 4 of the track books, and then you've done a Spider-Man book that is based on a character that we love. So what is your craft process like, or maybe I'm also just thinking of who's the hardest character you've ever written?
So first of all, I want to thank you, because I do these talks and I do panels all the time, and you know what people never ask me about? Craft, ever. People want to know whatever it is they think I represent, but I work as hard as everybody else in this business. I sit down at the page and you know what I mean? Like, for me, it's craft, right?
I'm a writer too.
And so thank you for that, right? So in terms of the hardest character I've written, it's hard. That's a tough question. I mean, there's so many different, Patina was not a difficult character to write, but she was one that I wanted to take really, really, really good care of, and to think about and be thoughtful about how to write her, because I wanted to write a girl character as a human being. And that took time and compassion, me dealing with my own stuff, me really sort of like taking my time to make sure that I nail this down, that I'm not swaying too far this way or that way, slipping into all the cliches that so many of us slip into, and really writing a young lady as a human being dealing with all the things that young ladies that I grew up with deal with. And so that was probably not the hardest character, but the character that was most challenging. Thank you for that. I got time for one last question. And even though you broke all the rules, I'm gonna take your question. What's your question? Oh, actually, I'll take your question. I'll take your question too. Real quick, what's your question?
When you write a book, normally how many drafts do you write?
It depends. I mean, Long Way Down, I think, was 20 drafts. Ghost was 2. Sometimes it just kind of works, you know? And other times you gotta work it out. It just kind of depends on the book, you know? Every book is different. You ready? You ready? Y'all ain't ready. Last question, real quick. I gave you a shot, you know what I mean?
When you were little, did you like candy?
That's the perfect question to end on. When I was little, did I like candy? The question is, did I like candy? And the answer is, not only did I like candy then, I just had like a brownie and a blondie upstairs. Anything with sugar in it is for me, you understand? Not you though, but for me, for sure. All right, y'all, peace. Have a good night.